today is hallucinogens and culture. We're going to examine the way that various cultures throughout the planet have been influenced in their social and cultural and intellectual development by hallucinogenic substances in the food chain. With me in the studio is Terence McKenna, author, lecturer, explorer, and philosopher. Terence is the co-author with his brother Dennis McKenna of a book called The Invisible Landscape, Mind, Hallucinogens, and the E-Chain. He's also the co-author of Psilocybin, Magic Mushroom Grower's Guide. He is the author of a computer program called Time Wave Zero, and he's the co-founder and president of an organization called Botanical Dimensions, which devotes itself to saving botanical plants used in shamanistic traditions throughout the world. Welcome, Terence. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to have you here. I think a good starting point for our discussion would be the ancient Vedic culture of India, one of the world's great and one of the world's earliest religions. The Rig Veda is considered by all scholars, I think, to be one of the most beautiful composite of religious hymns and deep philosophical discussions. And yet when one reads the Rig Veda carefully, one discovers an enormous emphasis on a mysterious, apparently hallucinogenic substance called Soma.
Yes, you're quite right. The ninth mandala of the Rig Veda is entirely devoted to singing the praises of Soma, and yet we do not know what Soma is or was. R. Gordon Wasson spent a considerable portion of his life researching this problem and reached the conclusion that Soma was Amanita muscaria, a mushroom that is symbiotic to pine and birch trees throughout much of the North Temperate Zone. However, scholars have cast doubt on his identification of Soma. Nevertheless, what we learn from Wasson's scholarship is that plants with hallucinogenic chemical principles in them have had an enormous impact on shaping the psychology of various cultures, both pre-literate and literate, throughout the world.
It seems quite clear that the references to Soma in the Rig Veda were not really symbolic. They referred to some actual plant substance.
Oh yes, definitely. Some sort of plant substance was prepared and ingested by a priesthood who then used the ecstatic experience induced by that plant as a basis for all of their metaphysical and philosophical speculations on the nature of the universe. The case of Soma is by no means unique. My own field of interest was the Amazon basin, where we don't have a great written literature, but we do have extensive oral tradition and a tradition of hallucinogenic plant use that persists to the present day.
Well, I think what's notable in South America is the drug ayahuasca.
Yes, ayahuasca is perhaps the world's largest and most thriving psychedelic religion. It touches the lives of millions of mestizos and Indians in the basin. It is a combinatorial drug, which makes it especially interesting to pharmacologists because its two principal ingredients are themselves inactive except in the presence of each other. So what we have in the case of ayahuasca is an example of a highly evolved folk pharmacology, and how a discovery like this was ever made in the first place is one of the challenging questions that anthropologists have to deal with. After all, in a square mile of Amazonian rainforest, it is not unusual to encounter 50,000 distinct species of plants. How then did these so-called primitive or primitive people make the connection between the combining of the bark of one with the leaves of another, boiled and put through a number of procedures to produce an intense visionary hallucinogen? This is an extremely interesting and to this day unanswered question.
Isn't it the case that I believe it was the German chemist who isolated this the chemical active ingredient in ayahuasca, originally named it telepathy?
Yes, that's right. Based on field reports of the states of group mind induced by ayahuasca, which is also called yahe, he felt it was fitting to name it telepathy. Now, the rules of scientific nomenclature are such that the first name of a compound is always given precedent, and about 20 years after it was named telepathy, it was realized that the identical compound had been isolated around the turn of the century from the giant Syrian root Pergamon harmala and named harmony. So today, the active ingredients of ayahuasca are known as harmaline, and tetrahydroharman. But your point is well taken. What struck the early explorers and ethnographers into the Amazon basin was the fact that the people seemed to be taking this plant preparation in order to undergo states of community group mindedness. And during these intoxicating